You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions.
You're listening to Mysteries and Monsters. I'm your host, Paul Bestel. The onward march of technology can often overlook the rich traditions of folklore and language around the world. In their fantastic new book, Heartstrings of the Khyber, a collection of Pashto Folktales, Komal Salman and Shaherzaad Laila have translated 19 tales into English for the first time from their Pakistani heartland. From epic battles, monsters, broken hearts and fairy queens, this book will show you that there is far more that connects us around the world than pushes us apart. But before that, of course, don't forget you can support Mysteries and Monsters by signing up at patreon.com/mysteriesandmonsters. $4 a month gets you ad-free episodes, guaranteed early releases, bonus content, and more. And you can also click the link in the show notes too. A big thank you to my two latest patrons, Jenny and Danny, and thank you to each and every one of you that continue to support the show with your contributions. You can find Mysteries and Monsters across most social media platforms. Please subscribe to the Mysteries and Monsters channel on YouTube. You can also visit mysteriesandmonsters.com for news and episodes. Our exclusive merchandise site is available via TeePublic, and you'll find the link for that in the show notes too. Our intro and outro music are performed by the marvellous Weary Pines. Thank you as always to Dean Bestall for his wonderful artwork, and the show is produced by Mr. Brennan Storr of the Ghost Story Guys. So Komal and Shaherzaad welcome us to the world of Pashto folklore next. The cultural and literary heritages of the world are vitally important in this modern era, wherever we find ourselves. In their new book, Heartstrings of the Khyber, authors Komal Salman and Shaherzaad Laila have translated a wonderful collection of Pashto folktales for the first time for our enjoyment. Ladies, I am delighted to welcome you to Mysteries and Monsters.
Thank you so much for having us.
What a wonderful collection of stories. I say that having read it and having had my heart broken several times by some of these tales that you have included. As I said in the introduction, the cultural heritages of nations all around the world can often be under pressure by the modern world. And obviously, as you say in your introductions to the book, Pashto has a history of oral translation, as we often see in, say, Native American or Indigenous Australian and the tribes of North America. Why do you think it's so important to preserve the oral traditions of the region in this form before it gets too far gone?
I feel like, for starters, Pakistan is seeing a lot of really quick rural to urban migration. We have in the past decade or so. And I'm consciously aware of the fact that I think my grandmother was the last generation of grandmothers who told their kids stories, at least in the cities. I don't see my mother doing that. And I probably don't see myself doing that. I probably do now, but as a regular urban Gen Z. And then secondly, there are certain pros and cons of being a post-colonial country. One being that our education, like my education, has entirely been in English my whole life. So English has sort of become my adapted language, and I feel more at home in English than I do in my other languages, which includes all of my first languages, which is 3 of them. So I feel like it's very important to sort of connect that demographic also back to the culture. And then we also have a lot of translations which needed to be either unwhitewashed or just revisited for a bunch of reasons. They were problematic simply because somewhere the authors translating them, I appreciate the work they put into it, but they were Orientalists. So you see that frame of mind, and sometimes it does need reframing.
In regards to your family upbringing then, Shaherzaad, was it similar to Komal's, where you had a generation, say your grandparents or your great-grandparents, that had the oral tradition that has also sort of declined as the generations have moved into the modern era as well?
So my background, my father is a writer, and we were just we never focused on stories or anything, but we were very much into literature, which is Urdu literature and poetry and Sufism, and these are the subjects that we have learned through the time. My father used to teach us on either we are eating, either we are traveling in car. He was explaining us the stories related to the poetry, the like Laila Majnu and Heer Ranja, and because they were written in poetry. So my father is a translator. He translates books from Arabic to Urdu. So I have a very rich background with my father in translation, and I always wanted to be like my father. So that's the first step I took with Komal when we translated this book. So Komal, on the other side, is very much into stories and folk tales, and because of her grandmother, and I was on the language side. So we both collaborated, and where language was needed, I was there. Where stories and context was needed, so Komal was there. So that was a very beautiful collaboration. We used our expertise in it.
It certainly seems like this has been the perfect collaboration, that you have basically covered the bases that what Komal doesn't know, you can step up and help out with, Shaherzaad, and vice versa. You've basically been able to sort of pool your strengths to create this wonderful collection.
Yeah, no, I mean, we tried our best. So we hope it doesn't disappoint anyone.
Well, it was an interesting point you brought up there, Komal, and I think this is one of the difficulties because, as you say, you've got this massive wedge of colonialism in your history, where you can see this in certain countries around the world, where there seems to be a line drawn where the past is finished and then everybody moves forward in whatever colonial direction you are being told to. And as you say, this is a prime example of literary whitewashing, where they'll remove certain things, or they'll sort of tone it down, or they'll try and anglicise certain things. I mean, my personal experience of the legends of Asia and the Middle East, probably my first introduction as a child was 1001 Arabian Nights, which is a prime example of that, because the version that got very popular was a Western version of a collection of stories. It wasn't the original book. And so it's interesting now that scholars and authors are basically unpeeling all that and trying to return back to the original source material. And I suppose this was a difficulty that you would have faced, that for a lot of these stories, I would imagine there were 2 or 3 versions, and it was drilling down to find out what the real story was rather than the modern version.
Yeah, so we did have multiple versions, and I'm not sure if you know this, but like Pashto has several different dialects. So we kind of also made like a mental map of things that, okay, so there is like a gradual progression from the north to the south. So it is these 3 cities on a map which have these 3 versions. So it makes sense because the middle version would be somewhere in the middle. And then we would just sort of reconcile them and add footnotes in the end.
So was it a case of basically looking and seeing the key ingredients in different versions to try and get to the sort of the crux of the story? Or do you think...
So the stories more or less did not change. Like there is this one story in particular which is Shaira Lamemune. Now the story originates in one village, and in that case, so basically there are 2 ways the story ends. One being he kills himself, the other one being he goes mad.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
It's not much of a choice.
Magic.
Yeah.
I love the both.
Yeah, he kind of deserved it. So we were happy to include both as a footnote.
We were very happy to include that when he was mad. You deserve this.
So I suppose when you were pulling this, because obviously the book has 19 stories in it, did you have a sort of top 5, a top 10 stories that were important to both of you, or stories that you've grown up with, personal favourites? Or do you think, were these the most important stories that you think deserved the translation first? How did you choose them?
I think Dil Bachak was one story which was very important to me. A, because it had directly been narrated to me by my grandmother, and because she had forgotten the name of the main character's sister, she called up all her cousins in the village just to confirm the name. And I just think that was really cute because it's like a really small act of attention which meant so much to us in terms of making sure it's authentic. And also because this story sort of has a Cinderella and a very Disney-esque premise. So it's kind of something we saw in our childhood, just never with a princess who was from the same part of the world as us.
Yeah, we were very happy that we got Aunt Cinderella. We never knew.
Yeah, we never knew. So basically, she gets blessed by an old witch she takes care of. So the blessing is that whenever she walks, there are like little gold tablets which just pop up beneath her feet. So eventually she collects all of that gold and she makes herself a pair of slippers. That slipper accidentally flows downstream when a prince sees it, and he decides, this is the shoe. It's very pretty. I wonder how pretty the girl is. This is the girl I want. His parents agree. They get married. Plot twist, she goes back home to meet her parents, and her stepmother curses her and puts a nail into her head and turns her into a sparrow. And sends her stepsister instead. So as a bird, she keeps going back to the palace and singing. And then eventually one day, near, like, in the palace garden, the prince and the sparrow are both crying. And that kind of uplifts the curse because the prince realizes that the sparrow has a nail in her head. And when he pulls the nail out, she just comes back to her human form, and then they live happily ever after.
Well, yes, that is very, very Cinderella-esque, isn't it? Which is famous here because obviously, as we were talking about the problems with translation, Cinderella is a prime example of that because these days everybody thinks it's a beautiful glass or golden slipper that found the bride, but it was actually made of fur in the original book. It's just the person that translated it didn't understand French very well, and so that's how it changed. So even wherever you are in the world, there is a similar story where you have evil stepmothers trying to trick people and hold people back because of jealousy or greed or whatever. Though I've yet to come across a story from Europe where somebody gets a nail in their head. I think that's a little severe. Usually it's just a curse or a bit of magic. But why not? What works for you, I suppose, is there. But it just shows that those themes are universal of love and challenge and the battles that people face. And often one of the morals is that love does conquer all. But as your book shows you, that's not a guarantee, it would seem.
Not always. Depends. I honestly think that because of Disney, we just have this sort of happily ever after drilled into our heads now, but that's not really the case. Like when I actually went through the original Brother Grimm fairy tales, I was traumatized. I was scared. I was like, no, I thought this was just us. Them too? You too, Brutus?
Yes, it is surprising. That's a great example, Komal, how the version of Grimm's fairy tales that people think they know bear very little resemblance to the original books, because the original stories are quite frightening because they were written to stop children wandering off into the woods or playing by the rivers or the lakes or whatever. That's what they were designed to do. They were stories of warnings, of moral fortitude and what the right thing would be to do. But people always forget things like Little Red Riding Hood, that it's quite a violent story. There's a lot of people getting killed in that story originally, whereas these days it's just the wolf that ends up coming unstuck, it would seem.
Yeah.
Has this happened for yourselves in regards to the folklore of your region? Has it become sanitised a little bit as well? Was that a challenge that you had to deal with it? Or have they essentially remained changed into the modern era, but they've just been lost because of how they were told and passed on?
I believe that the sanitization has it has been resisted to some extent, primarily because literacy rates amongst women are still not at 100%. So when you're detached from the education system, you just perceive the world as your parents did. So in a way, it's like a double-edged sword, I would say. There were things which were new to us, like I wear a nose ring because in the era my mom grew up in, nose rings sort of became quote-unquote immodest because they were seen as an influence from the West, which is really not the case. Nose rings have been a part of our culture for a very long time, but that just one particular generation which grew up in the 70s, it didn't sit well with it. But I knew that my late grandmother really liked them, so I decided to get one. It was only after I went through these stories that there's this one specific dialogue in which the girl tells her beloved that, do you want someone else to touch my nose ring? And I was very confused about what that means. Why would someone touch my nose ring? And then I had to go look for pictures. So nose rings typically fell to the lips.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to kiss me, they have to take off my nose ring first, thereby making it a symbol of chastity and love. So, there's like very obscure things we found. Then there's another story in which a girl makes a tobacco pouch for her husband. I'm like, cute. That's a gift I had never thought of before.
Illegally cute. I love when Komal speaks about folklore and everything because it's her forte.
I suppose as well, Shaherzaad, as you were saying in regards to your skills as a translator, was it difficult to try and pin down sources that went as far back as possible? I mean, were there any written sources for some of these stories in certain different languages? Because obviously, as we said earlier, migration has a lot to do with how stories disappear or even change when people read them in different areas, or the topography of the region they've moved to may see those stories adapt and change, because they may have stories in mountainous regions or where you have really bad winters, but you might move somewhere where those don't apply anymore, or the language has adapted and changed from its original telling. So was that a challenge, trying to find those original sources?
Yeah, it was a challenge because the book we were translating was very old and the authors were not alive anymore. So that was that book has almost, I think, 15 stories or 13 stories. And then we added more stories that were of public interest, like Lala Majnu, Shirin Farhad, that are public properties now. They are folk tales, basically, that are not, that don't have copyright issues or anything. So the most difficult thing for me was because I have a Punjabi background. So because I am from Faisalabad, I'm not from Pashtun area. Komal has some Pashtun background. So I was translating a total different contextual book that has Pashtun culture and Pashtun context. And I am from Punjabi family. So that was difficult, but the thing that kept me going was Urdu language, because somehow it's in my blood that I am good in that language. So we were just we were confused sometimes that what to do with this specific word and context now. So we used to call professors, and I used to call my father, and what does that mean? Because the nose ring she's talking about is very different, has a different name, Pezwan, I think that was the name. And we were just like, what is Pezwan? Then we Googled it and we called everyone. And so these were, some of the context were very difficult to translate. And then some sentences, some proverbs, some clauses that were highly contextual in Pashtun culture. So we were a bit afraid to do some translation, but I think we pulled it off, and then we didn't change the words. We kept it in the original language. And then we were talking about the language context in the last podcast with the bread and cakes thing. So we don't eat the cakes in lunch, and they were words like this, like we have chapati here, we have roti here, with the bread.
Yes.
you people call. So these things were very different in the culture. So the process, we didn't change the words that have the context of our culture. So this was something difficult for me because of the background. I don't have any Pashtun background. So people were asking me, "You're Punjabi. How are you translating the Pashtun? You don't have any background." I said, "I have my friend and I have my co-author that helps me, and I help her in the language." So it was very fun. It was very fun writing that book, and I learned a lot.
We did find the original source material for Laila Majnu, because Laila Majnu was translated directly from Nizami's Persian Laila Majnu into Pashto.
Yes.
Because of course Iran is just next door.
Yes.
So we went back to the original one for that. Then there was another story about Prince Behram. We found an English translation. And then we found a Pashto translation. So there was no Urdu in between. So, we spent a few days panic calling professors and just finding someone who could help us with. Luckily, I found an acquaintance who has done his master's in Pashto linguistics. So he stepped up and helped us through the whole story. Interesting story. The whole premise of that story is that the main character, like the hero and the heroine in the story, are the prince and the queen of fairies. In the English translation, so two fun things about it. It was a mandatory part of course syllabus for British officers who were coming in to sit in their civil service exams for the Northwest Frontier Province, as it was then called. And the second thing is that the word pari was changed to jinns, and we were just confused, like, there is no king of fairies because the fairies always have a queen. We have never in our lives heard of the fairies having a king because they're a female-dominated race, so they don't have a king.
Yes.
What is going on? This is just altering the whole cultural dimension of the story. And on top of that, it was like, it had this impact on us. Like, you were sitting an exam about a story which was translated wrong.
Yes.
Make it make sense to me. And then there was this confusion about fairies and jinns also. So,
yes.
These are two different races in the supernatural.
Yes. Well, I have to say, that's my favourite story in the book.
Oh, thank you.
I love that one.
I think that was the hardest to translate.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Well, there you are. Your efforts have been greatly appreciated by myself. Because
thank you so much.
That's a perfect example of an eye-opening story for someone like myself who has a very limited knowledge of South Asian culture and the traditions and the stories of that land outside of Jinn. And so when you're explaining that, I can only presume that must have had some kind of British interference in the story, because King of the Fairies is something you would attach to British and Irish folklore.
Yeah, so it's a concept from Celtic folklore, and yes, the story was translated by an Englishman. And I feel like it's also maybe a little bit of a language barrier, because pari sounds very close to the Pashto word for jinn, which is piriyan.
Ah.
So to someone who is not a native speaker, piriyan and pariyan does not sound so different.
But it's fascinating because I think if you asked anybody with a kind of interest in this, most people will talk about the jinn, because it seems to be the one that a lot of Western authors have kind of latched onto as the be-all and end-all of Asian folklore, which I think is deeply unfair because it's a very rich tapestry. And I think it's kind of left everything else behind, which is quite peculiar, because even in my experience of speaking to people of similar cultural heritages from all over the area, I've got a couple of friends who are Somali Muslims, and they've told me stories of jinn. I've got friends whose families originated from the Pakistani region. They've told me stories about jinn, but I'd never heard of the peri at all. And they all know I'm weird, and I like weird stories about weird things. So I think that's probably one of those things where they probably didn't know much about them. It was just the certain ones that latched on when they would tell their stories or whatever.
And I feel like I'm really sorry to cut you, there's also this dichotomy that since you're a grown-up, if somebody's telling you a story about the supernatural, it will be about jinn.
Yes.
If a child had asked them, they would have picked a fairy story.
Ah.
Like, it's just a cultural thing. I don't know why and I don't know how, but like, it's just how people are. Yeah, fairy tales are typically seen as very childish. So unless you specify that I want to know
Childish.
this, they will give you whatever horror stories they know.
Well, I think that's the thing, because I know that the tradition of sitting around and telling scary stories to each other is something that everybody does around the world, and I'm not really sure why there is this concept, I think, sometimes that we just presume, certain people presume, ladies, that doesn't happen in other places, where it clearly does, because you only have to look at every region in the world. They've all got ghost stories. They've all got these kinds of stories, and I think it's silly, really, because I just found that fascinating, because having a queen of fairies and having, once again, we've got this love battle with sort of incredibly powerful beings not being very happy about things, and it's about the love conquering all, I think, in that particular story. But also often the suitors are very cheeky, aren't they? Because that prime example, he steals her crown and her wings while she's not watching. I think that's just bad manners to get her attention, but she seems very impressed by it because he's quite hunky.
I do think that there is this little trope of women being unhinged, which is true. I am a living example of that. We are still unhinged. Every woman in my entire bloodline is some level of unhinged. We're all a little bit known.
Well, I'm in good
So
company.
I understand.
What about yourself, Shaherzaad? Is there a history of unhingedness in your side?
I don't know. I think every girl in my friends and circles is unhinged, because I relate to Komal. Yeah, we are just a bunch of, desi girls.
Yes. So, as you say, I think that's quite interesting as well, that when you look at the Pashto fairies, have they been, as you say, reduced to children's stories, whereas the original stories are quite scary and frightening? But it's just that, I mean, it happened here. The same in British folklore, that fairies became Disneyfied and everything was like Tinkerbell. But then you look at the original stories and the last thing you'd want to do is meet the fairies or try and trick them, because it would be the stupidest thing you could do.
So there's also this thing that in Pashto folklore and generally in like the South Asian and the Central Asia and the Persianate world. So in these three regions, Pari specifically refers to, like in Celtic folklore and British folklore, the concept of the fairy folk is like they can be nice and they can be evil. You don't want to meet them. But in our part of the world, it's exclusively a very Tinkerbell-ish creature. So it's already just very nice. It loves people. It will love you if you do good things. It will leave you presents, and it's okay. So, and because they're such an unproblematic creature, I think it's just usually you tell these kind of stories to children because you don't want to scare them.
Were there anything that surprised you, that you uncovered a story or a sort of moral example that's been completely lost or overlooked consistently or changed beyond its original concepts? Because you can sometimes see that in certain stories when you go back to the original source material. It's almost a different story that's spoken about in the modern era. Did you have those kind of challenges where it's been completely over-adapted?
Not really, but there was this one interesting concept we saw in which a man secretly wants to meet with the princess. So he's also a prince, but he's in disguise. He disguises himself as a woman to meet her once. And then his friend, who is a goldsmith,
I love that story.
creates a statue of a lion in which the person can hide and sneak into the palace and then meet the girl again. Like,
That's a hint of
it
it.
was surprising because we don't see the
So
same effort
creative. It
from
was so
many.
creative. I love Men not men anymore.
Men are not menning anymore.
We laughed so hard at the story. That was the most fun part of our
Yeah,
translation
we were
when we
laughing
used
through
to
the whole
translate the
story.
book. That story, that story was amazing. I think you have read it. You must have read it. Jalad Mehbooba.
Yes.
So it was like a ridiculous level of hilarious. And we just didn't expect this kind of humor from our society.
Yeah. Another thing that surprised me was women were very strong and independent, and no woman was in kitchen. And she's fighting for the love of her life, and she's doing everything for the man he wants to marry. Even like we are very independent. I am an independent woman. Komal is independent. My mother is independent. Komal's mother is independent. So we never saw women really in kitchen and doing the chores for the husbands they show on TV. We have most of women now in Pakistan are independent, very strong. But I was very shocked that back then in an area like where women are suppressed, we see women as suppressed woman gender. They were very strong and independent, and you've read the stories, so you have an idea that they have knives and they are going out and they're fighting for the love of their life. So that shocked me. That I was very impressed. That empowered woman, we have the history.
Yeah, it was a surprise to me too to find that women did accompany men to the battlefield as well. Which is something I knew existed in some part of the region as far as the tribes were nomadic, but once they started settling down, things started to change. And I feel like a lot of our own perceptions about our own people have largely been shaped by Western media, unfortunately. And it was like an internal self-reflection process that, okay, empowerment and feminism just meant very different things in very different contexts. So sort of copy-pasting the theory of white feminism to your own people is why a lot of these misconceptions exist in our minds.
And the women were in chadars and they were in hijabs and they were in chadars, and there was no sense of that freedom that West is telling us, that throw away your clothes and then you're independent. No, that wasn't the case in our story. And that isn't the case in our society. We are independent and we have our own dressing up and dress code. So I love that part of our stories, of our book.
Sometimes people can't help framing a culture they don't understand in their perceptions of freedom, shall we say. And therefore, when you get that kind of thing, they presume, oh, well, they're not wearing jeans, so they must be downtrodden, or something like that. But fashion's different all over the world. With the greatest respect, you're not going to be walking across sub-Saharan Africa in a pair of jeans and a jacket, are you? You're going to dress for the environment or your culture. It's what you're used to. The products, the crops that you grow, it all tallies into what you create as your culture, as your clothing, as your outfits. It's what you need for your environment. So I completely take that on board, because I think when you look at Western folklore and the like, there is the similar kind of thing that has kind of gone through this male redevelopment, as it were, that we've lost these kinds of stories where everybody's on an equal footing in a certain context, and there is no designation of, oh, well, you're a man, you must do that, you're a woman, you have to do that. There is none of that. It's just people living and doing what they need to do at that particular time.
And a lot of times you see that balance of power, it's just balanced by the fact that, like, obviously, as people, you, I, Shaherzaad, everybody, we exist in multiple spheres. So there's us at work, and then there's us at home, and then there's us with our friends and our family, and so on. So you see that balance come into play where one person has control over a certain sphere and the other person has like more control over the other sphere. So in the end, it all checks out. There's no established hierarchy, to put it that way.
I have to say, some of the stories are almost epic in how long that they seem to. I mean, there's one particular story. Yes, so Laila Majnun is one of those stories, I just thought, how much more does this man have to suffer throughout this story? Because he just seems to just be a glutton for punishment. And unfortunately, he seems to sort of pull people into his lovelorn orbit. And so you see this incredible epic where people go to war for him to win the hand of someone who is blocked from him. And you often get these kinds of stories, as you say, that show that the princesses aren't being married off to any old person. A lot of them have sort of self-determination. You know, I don't want to marry that man, I'm in love with him. Oh, well, we don't think he's from the right tribe. I mean, these are stories that are the same the world over, aren't they? You know, two lovers from the wrong side of the tracks, Romeo and Juliet, whatever. These are stories that have been in all cultures all across. But this one, I kept thinking, how bad does it have to be for this chap? His torment just doesn't seem to stop.
So yeah, a lot of our stories are epic in nature, because stories were either typically told as epics or as story cycles. So Kissa Goi is a very distinct folk form of telling stories, because again, we did not have much entertainment back in the day. So of course, people sat and told each other stories. But yeah, I think one key takeaway from Laila Majnu is that Laila Majnu was, by the way, an Arabic folktale, but it was the first piece of foreign literature to be translated into Pashto.
Wow.
But because it was so many hundred years ago, it has just sort of become a part of Pashto folklore as well. So I think one key takeaway is that we don't do nonchalant.
His hard work that paid off, and we take Majnu's name everywhere whenever someone falls in love, and they say he's Majnu. So that's the hard work that paid off. So his example.
There are so many proverbs and like day-to-day phrases with a reference to Majnu. It's just that common in the language.
Yeah.
And not just Pashto, even other even other ethnic languages in Pakistan and Urdu.
Ah, so has it become to symbolise lovelorn or lovesick then? Is that what it, if someone's madly in love with someone, it's Majnun?
Yeah. My name is Laila. I am Shaherzaad Laila. So my friends ask, where's your Majnu? Where's your Majnu? So,
now she has one. She got married recently, now she has one.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah, he's washing clothes. Yeah.
Are there any other examples like that then? Because I suppose that's one of the things perhaps you weren't aware of, or you were surprised when you discovered that they'd come from other regions and essentially become established Pashto stories. Was that the first example, or have you come over other such ones that you've...
We also came across Shirin Farhad, which is originally a Persian story, Shirin Khusro.
Yeah.
And that also, we found 3 variations of Shirin Khusro or Shirin Farhad. The original Persian, the version in Balochistan, in Brahui, which is sort of in the middle of Iran and KPK, if you're like going like this. It's like an L shape in terms of geography. And then you have the Pashto variation. So it was like a very interesting progression. The main character ends up kind of becoming the side chick in the Pashto story. So that was kind of fun to see. And so yeah, that's a story. And also Farhad is also a very common reference used for love sickness.
It's in our poetry, Majnu and Farhad.
A lot of
and Rana from Punjab, right? They are very common examples of fighting for your love and doing everything for the
both
love.
men and women.
So Farhad was basically digging a mountain to find water.
Oh, yes.
To win over his woman.
And then he gets tricked and everybody gets sad. Another one of those, you see, and there the dad sat at the end, saying, "I wish I just let them be," because that's one of those. He's now lost everything. His heart's broken. He's had to kill some evil old witch. His daughter's dead. The man she loves is dead, but he's got some lovely water. Well done, everyone.
I think in this particular story, there's also a lesson for parents and not just children. Like, okay, you do not fall in love. as you please. But you, in case they do, just let them be. If they die.
Absolutely.
That kind of thing.
Absolutely. Do you both have a favourite particular story in there, either that means a lot to you or that you took great satisfaction in translating and bringing to a modern audience, or do you just love them all equally, like little babies?
I think my favorite would be Dil Bachak.
Yeah, my favorite was Jalat Mehbooba. I told you earlier. It was very funny story, and the situations were very creative because I work in TV channel and write scripts for dramas. So I was very interested in situation. We always need situations. We have to show boy doing things for the girl. So these were they were very creative situations. What else can boy can do for a girl? Yeah, we can do this and we can do this. It was a very creative story. And Dil Bachak, yeah, it was also my favorite. 2 or 3. So the other were very tragic and we were very sad about those endings. And I was very frightened.
By the end, we were just thinking how anyone who reads this will end up getting depressed. So the stories are not put in order of preference. They are put in order of a conscious effort. Happy story, sad story. Happy story, sad story. Okay story, sad story.
Because we were traumatized by translating it. And if you read back tragic stories. Yeah,
well,
you were very
I think that's important because you don't want to make people too sad that they don't want to buy a next book. You want to keep them enticed. You don't want to think, oh my God, Komal and Shaherzaad are here to ruin my day again with some more sad stories.
Yeah. We wouldn't want that ever.
So, on top of this wonderful collection that's available for people to get, you're also very much involved in Folkloristan. How has that come together? So, how has this been born? Because obviously, as you say, Shaherzaad, you work in television. And I'm interested to see how has modern Pakistani sort of drama and television, does it reflect any of these kind of templates that we have? Because there are lots of stories all around the world that are essentially the same thing. They just are adapted for that language or that country's culture or history or whatever, and they essentially tell the same story. They're just designed for that particular market. Has it had any influence? And if so, how is it viewed in regards to folklore on Pakistani television? Does it have these kind of fantasy stories on top of, say, normal drama?
Yeah, we have a very common saying in drama industry that there are only 4 to 5 stories that exist. Other are just the sub stories that they link from those stories. So we don't have new stories anymore. We have repetitions of stories, and every other story is the same. So there is no new story, but every story is somehow have new situations, new drama, new perspective. And I can give you one example. When I was translating this book with Komal, I joined Hum TV in that time. Yeah. So we were writing a drama, and it has one Pashto mother, and there was one Punjabi mother. So they were very different culturally in one home. So whenever the girl was talking to her Pashto mother, so I used to tell my boss that I have this concept of the Dil Bachak, and I have this story that can we use that in our drama? Can we use this in our drama? So my boss always used to welcome those new ideas. I was reading from the book, and I tried to incorporate them in our script. So we can connect. Also, we had a drama. It just got ended. It was Shiri Farhad. It was named Shiri Farhad. There was a love story that was set up in totally different time and totally different what can you say context. But the passion of the hard work. What can you say? Like Komal kya keh sakte hai usko?
Like the crux of the story was kind of.
It was relatable to the Shiri Farhad story. The Farhad was a hero. So we have always cultural context in our scripts and dramas. And we have Heer Ranjha examples, and we have dramas on Heer Ranjha, we have dramas on Laila Majnu, we have dramas on Shiri Farhad, we have dramas on other Sassi Punnu. So it's always related. The stories are always relatable in our current drama industry too. if not the whole story, you can have situations, you can have dialogues telling the history. It is relatable in my field because I work in TV.
So when it comes to Folkloristan, is it a case of trying to pull these oral stories from all regions, or is it firstly you're focusing on digitising Pashto and moving forwards, or is it a case of you're not really bothered where you uncover the story, you're just trying to save them at the moment?
So, okay, interesting backstory to Folkloristan. I was in my undergrad when I started Folkloristan. We were supposed to write an exam paper on pitching a certain policy to the Ministry of Culture. So when I wrote my paper, I read about this Japanese person who... I've forgotten the name of the guy, I'm sorry. But he basically published an ad in the newspaper with two of his friends, and they ended up publishing Japan's biggest collection of folktales to date.
Wow.
And because it was distance learning and COVID and I had nothing to do, I was like, I'll just tweet. And that's how I ended up collecting like the first 100 or 120 of my stories.
Wow.
People just responded on Twitter, and people were really happy to share stories with us. And then they were sitting in my laptop because in retrospect I realized why nobody wanted to publish that collection. It was all over the place.
Yes.
Fairies, romance, animals, fables, don't steal, don't lie, kill someone. It was chaos. So it was sitting in my laptop until I interned with the digital media wing when it was inaugurated by former Prime Minister Imran Khan's government. That's where we met each other. And that's how we kind of became acquainted. And then she was really excited about Folkloristan. So she has been helping me on and off since then. And we're not focusing on Pashto. It's like whatever story, just let us get on with it. We do have like a 3-pronged approach. So we have stories we can already find in English, but they just need to be refined. And then B, we have stories which need to be unwhitewashed, which have been written in English, but like not by our own people.
Yes.
And then we have stories which either exist only in their local languages, in which case we translate them, or they simply haven't been written at all. So I do have a volunteer-based team who work on translations from different regions.
I suppose that's one of the big challenges that people often wouldn't consider, is that when you have countries such as Pakistan, you have very different regional dialects or nomadic peoples that have moved around over the years and have settled in certain areas and have essentially become self-contained languages. How many variations are you having to sort of look at and unpick? Because I think this is one of the things when you talk about obviously your strengths in the languages that you both can speak. I think people would be surprised that you start to very quickly realise that there's dozens, really. You've just got to be able to accept them as they come in, and I suppose that's the biggest challenge, is it not?
I think the biggest challenge, since you mentioned tribes and everything, is that I don't think... so a lot of the tribes, they typically don't settle in cities like Islamabad. They settle in other rural parts of the country.
Yes.
In which case, they speak multiple languages, neither of which, let's say, me or Shaherzaad speak. So that's where it becomes a problem. And I don't think that their stories have really left them. Pakistan has over 70 languages at the moment, and only 5 of them have scripts.
Wow.
So currently we're only looking at languages which sort of have a written script to go with them. So Sindhi, Balochi, Pashto, Punjabi, Urdu. And because I know a few people from the Gilgit-Baltistan region, so even though those languages don't have formalized scripts as of yet, some of them do, some of them don't, we end up just collecting the stories orally. But beyond that, it's... I don't know how we're going to do it. I can try. But it's daunting.
Yes.
To even think about it, because how am I going to end up doing justice to everyone? I don't know.
Well, I think that's the thing. As you jokingly said, I agree, Shaherzaad. If anybody can, Komal can. I think this is the thing. As you jokingly mentioned, when you got all these stories, you suddenly realise why nobody had wanted to do this before. And I think that's just another thing. But it's clearly vitally important, because I think people would be amazed to hear the number of languages spoken in Pakistan, and the fact that 65 of them don't seem to have much written record. So I would imagine these are time sensitive as well in regards to the number of people that can speak certain languages.
Yeah, a few languages are dying out. Like my mother's mother tongue is Hindko. Hindko has grown as a language exponentially, and it has directly contributed to Torwali not being spoken so much anymore in the whole region of Khoistan.
Wow.
So there's that. Then there's another language. I think there are only 3 old men who sort of remember that language. That language, in turn, was, I believe, made extinct by Torwali itself.
Oh.
So it's like that cycle. And at this point, I'm just like, God, just please help me. Just let my intuition tell me what I should do next, because I don't know.
I think it is one of those things, because obviously here in the West we've had certain projects over the years where they've gone to certain locations, certain regions, and recorded as many stories as they possibly can for posterity. And like you say, I suppose one of the difficulties is firstly going out there and finding a language that you can speak on an equal level, so you both understand what you're trying to achieve here for both of you. But also the fact, as you say, you've got certain languages where there's just 3 old people somewhere who can speak it.
And I feel like also, sorry, just to add on to this, there's also a term of, like, in geographical terms, you can go around England because it's 6 hours, 4 hours,
Yeah,
one
it's
end
tiny.
to the other.
It's tiny, and we forget how small we are.
Yeah. So 4 hours is like Lahore. Lahore is just really close by. We don't count Lahore as like a city very far away from Islamabad.
Yes.
So it would be a very extensive project to just go around.
Absolutely. I suppose as well it's difficult because you've probably got bleeding on the borders from neighbouring nations, as you were saying about some of, obviously the proximity of Iran and some of the stories that have come across from in Arabic and Persian legend. Is that still going on, where you've got those kinds of border bleeds, and especially everything that's happened about the change of borders in the last 70 years? I would imagine that's also changed and pushed people in different directions.
So the border bleed in the last 70 years, it primarily affected Punjab and Sindh. So I think in terms of folk literature, I think Shaherzaad would be better positioned to speak on how it impacted literature. But yeah, there definitely is a like consistent cultural exchange in some way, shape, or form, and it's like you're just open to discovery. And then one issue itself being commute. So if I want to go to some random village next to some random city, I need to first take a step back. I need to find someone there who like either knows my family or knows me, because I cannot just waltz everywhere.
It's an example. I went to Gilgit-Baltistan last month on my honeymoon. I took this book everywhere where I went. So it was like first baby. So when I went to Gilgit-Baltistan, I was there's something in my brain that I realize whenever I'm having fun, I start to realize that I'm wasting my life. So I have to do something. So I called Komal on my honeymoon, and I asked, should we gather some stories from here? And she was like, yeah, do try it. So we had our honeymoon, and I was thinking about stories and everything, because it's very difficult for me. I didn't know. I wouldn't know when will I go back and when will I travel again. And because it's a flight from here, it's a very dangerous flight when you go from Islamabad to Skardu, and then there's weather conditions, and there are many conditions, and then the finances and everything, and then time. So I was thinking that I should gather some stories. So my husband works in Academy of Letters. That institute basically preserves the languages and cultural books and everything, literature. That institute is a government institution that works on it. So he had some references there, and he called some author there, and he said, my wife wants to meet you and want some stories. So he came, he picked us, and he took us to a very nice restaurant, very cultural restaurant, and he asked me what stories do you want. So he lives there basically in Gilgit Baltistan. He's a very known personality there. So then I asked him about the stories and everything, and he had a book in which he had translated some stories from Gilgit Baltistan to Urdu. And then my brain worked and I said, can you give me that book, and I want to translate your book to English with a friend, and we're gonna promote it. So this is what I was doing on my honeymoon basically. So he said yeah, of course. So I think we are planning again to work on stories from Gilgit Baltistan, either from other province, but it's very difficult for us to travel a lot, and because we have jobs, we have families, and we are girls, we don't travel like that. We have to come home by 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. Before Maghrib prayer, because our mothers will go mad. So yeah, we have responsibilities and other issues, but whenever we get chance, whenever we get anyone from other culture, other province, other city, we talk about stories, and we are always open for the stories. Give us the stories, and we want to translate. And this book came up like that. We didn't plan it. We didn't have any idea. So there was one evening in Ramzan, she called me and she said, I found a book that's very, very old book, and the Urdu is very difficult. I can't translate it. Can you help me in it? I was like, oh, you want help professionally, or you want help as a friend? So she said, let's do it professionally. So we used to sit an evening in Ramzan after iftar. We used to sit and we used to give it 2 hours per day, and we pulled it off.
And in those 2 hours, both my mom and her mom used to barge into our rooms to scold us about something.
Yeah, because
So
there are dishes, there are feast every day in Ramzan.
haven't said your prayers.
Yes, jobs first, ladies, then fun.
Yeah, chores first.
Yeah, chores first. So we pulled it off, and I think we will work. I'm waiting for Ramzan because I think there is barakah. We have a very religious concept of barakah, that abundance basically. So in everything in Ramzan. So I think we will have that barakah in Ramzan, and we will pull off another book in Ramzan, inshallah.
And also in terms of work, the culture is such that every office just designs its schedule, putting Ramzan out of the equation. So no events, no extra workload. It's just as less work as possible because everybody's hungry and it gets really hard to work. Everyone's sleep deprived for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that's why we used to do it after iftar with 2 cups of tea.
Yeah.
And
cigarettes.
Cigarettes. Yeah, for Komal. Please don't make my mother.
It's all right. Secrets are safe with me, ladies. You're okay.
Yeah, I hope.
But I suppose as well, that just shows. I mean, obviously, Komal got you a notebook and a tape recorder for your wedding gift then, Shaherzaad, so you could pick these stories up on your travels on your honeymoon. That's what she should have bought you.
Yeah.
Komal.
I think I should do that.
Yes. Anniversary present.
Yeah. When we had flight, it was when we received the books, the author copies, I had the flight next day. So I came to Komal. I went to Komal house at
10:30, maybe 11.
Yeah, I think it was almost midnight when I went to Komal's house. She threw the book. Yeah, I think I wanted a copy. So she didn't open the door because it was locked, and she just gave him book.
Yeah. Good night.
And then I took this to my honeymoon, and everywhere I was making videos of my book everywhere, and my husband was jealous. Come on, please.
Just point at it and say, "Excuse me, I'm an author. Excuse me."
You're an author now, yeah.
Well, I suppose, like you say, this is a massive undertaking that you've taken on, but obviously it's something that's vitally important, you know, as much. And I think this is the thing that, as you say, Shaherzaad, I suffer from that because we call it imposter syndrome here. So when you're sat down having fun, your brain says, why are you having fun? There's something, go and find something to do. You should be working, you should be answering emails. It's very hard to switch yourself off and relax, I think, sometimes. And so I get exactly what you mean, because I'm one of those people. I'll go somewhere for a day out and I'll start looking for the weird stuff. Or, you know, just calm down, just enjoy yourself, relax. But my brain doesn't let me. So I suppose you both got that.
Yeah, it's my father instinct.
And then there is this one other problem with me. Like, the other day I was sitting at a restaurant with my whole family. My aunt was over from Karachi. So we took her out for dinner. We had dinner and she just passed me the feedback card. And in the feedback card, there was a painting right in front of me. And I just wrote in the feedback card, change this painting. This painting isn't accurate. And how do you know? It's a Chinese restaurant. I'm like, no, but this is Diao Chan. She was one of the 4 ancient beauties of ancient China. They did not wear white. And I went off into this whole stream of random things, and they're just like, yeah, we're leaving. Bye. We don't know you. And then there's also, like, since I also contributed to the illustrations.
Yes.
When it comes to the design part of things, I will do one project in a year which will make me take a step back and be like, oh my god, I've outdone myself. And then I will spend the rest of the year thinking I'm not good enough.
Yes.
And like just struggling because I don't meet my own standards. So it's very tricky territory to navigate. Like by the time the book came out, I was like, I don't like the illustrations. I could have done better.
Yes. Well, I chuckled in the introduction when you were saying that your sister teased you until you made them better.
Yeah. I was being nice. She actually believed me. I showed her like one of the first drafts of the drawing. She's like, why does he have duck feet? Go and change his shoes. Straight up. It's always brutal feedback. She never bothers sugarcoating anything. And she's like 8 years younger than me. So she just has that leverage of being the younger sibling.
Yeah. Cheeky.
Yeah, very cheeky.
And the title page. You didn't tell about the title page.
Well, I thought your drawings were
You have on title page?
Yes.
Yeah, the good title page.
I thought your illustrations are outstanding, regardless of what your sister may say, Komal. So, I'd just like to say thank you both very much for spending some time sharing your love of this particular subject and the stories you've collected. I really hope this is not the last book you write together, because I think it's important, not just for yourselves, but I think it's important for Pakistan to put itself out there in this context, because
definitely
it gets overlooked.
Yeah.
You know, I suspect nobody in the West could tell me stories about Afghanistan, for example, either. Other than that, once again, they always talk about the jinn. That's it. It's the be-all and end-all for some people. I love this. I've learnt more reading your book than I've learnt in my 53 years on this planet about your region and your culture. And it has given me such a rich understanding and thirst to learn more that I really hope you continue. So where can everybody get a copy of this book and also follow your work for Folkloristan, guys?
So Folkloristan has a website and we also have an Instagram. It's at Folkloristan. You can find an archive of graphic design on the Folkloristan website, but on Instagram we go by the name Ajaib Ghar. Ajaib Ghar is basically the Urdu and the Persian word for museum, essentially. The book in the UK, you should be able to find it from Amazon UK. It's also there on TJ Jones. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also there on Waterstones.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, I shall put links to everything in the show notes so people can find the book, find your Instagram, follow the website, keep up to date. I will look forward to this and your ongoing work together. I really hope I get a chance to speak to you both again. It's been lovely to learn so much from you both.
Thank you so much for having us. We really had fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was an honor.